Protests erupted outside the Supreme Court this week as the justices debated a wild landmark case on parents' rights to opt their kids out of reading LGBTQ storybooks. And when we say kids, we're talking about 3-year-olds to 5th grade. So 3-year-olds reading these books. Listen to this. Some of the controversial books at the center of the case include Prince and Knight, which centers on 2 men who fall in love. Born Ready is about Penelope, who, quote, knows that he's a boy. The problem is getting everyone else to realize it, because that's what 3-year-olds need to be thinking about. And My Rainbow focuses on a young transgender girl who wants long hair like her dolls. In this book, titled Pride Puppy, it's a picture book aimed at 3- and 4-year-olds, and it instructs kids to look for items they might find at a gay pride parade, such as underwear, lip rings, drag queens. All things my 2-year-old is not asking about right now, but yeah, send him to school and maybe he'll start asking. Listen to this one moment. It's between Justice Neil Gorsuch and a Maryland school district's lawyer. Gained a lot of attention when Gorsuch questioned the content that is in that specific book. Watch.
And they're being used in English language instruction at age 3. Some of them.
Pride Puppy was the book that was used for the pre-kindergarten curriculum. That's no longer in the curriculum.
That's the one where they are supposed to look for the leather and things and bondage, things like that.
It's not bondage. It's a woman in a leather.
Sex worker, right?
No.
No?
That's not correct. No.
Gosh, I read it.
It's a drag queen.
Drag queen and drag queen.
Haley, let me tell you a little bit about my morning. I have a 5-year-old. I have a 2-year-old. You're about to have a baby yourself. My 2.5-year-old son, Nash, ran up to me with the Bible Stories book, and we began reading that together. He can barely speak. He can put together a few words, not yet a sentence. But somehow the lawyer for the Maryland school district thinks that my son needs to be reading about drag queens. And he thought he had gotten Justice Gorsuch when he said there's no bondage, it's drag queens. Newsflash, 2.5-year-olds do not need to be reading about this. I doubt you will be reading that to your new child.
Absolutely not. And you know what's funny is the lawyer seemed surprised that Justice Gorsuch had actually read the content that was being made available to, like you said, 3-, 4-, 5-year-olds. And my husband and I are expecting baby number 1 this year, and education is definitely a concern. We live not too far from Montgomery County, and it's pretty outrageous that we have to be on the lookout for policies like these. Parents deserve better than this. And there was another really clarifying moment during the oral arguments that I listened in on earlier this week, and it was when Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was speaking, and she said that you have a choice. You don't have to send your kid to a public school, rejecting the idea that somehow this material placed an undue burden on parents who simply want the option to opt out. They're not even asking the schools to get rid of the books entirely. They're just saying, we want the option to not have to expose our children to that. And number one, I find it very ironic that Justice Jackson apparently endorses school choice in that case. Of course, we all know that she doesn't. But it's interesting to me that the leftist justice and many others on the left only seem to apply this standard of choice when it comes to leftist ideology. You might think that she would then apply that standard to other issues, such as which bakery you should patronize. There are plenty of other cases where she has actually come down on the exact opposite side of the aisle. So I do find it a bit ironic there.
You know, there was this interesting moment, and it was from Justice Kagan. Now, Justice Kagan was appointed to the court by President Obama, so she doesn't often side with the conservative side of the court. But listen here, she may in this case.
These are, young kids, picture books, and on matters concerning sexuality. I suspect there are a lot of non-religious parents who weren't all that thrilled about this.
I mean, Arthel, you could see a universe where this is a 7-2 decision, and Kagan may be breaking with the conservative wing.
Well, because I don't think it's about left or right. Here's the deal. I remember, I know we're talking about kids who are younger than this, but I remember in my Catholic elementary school in New Orleans learning about male and female anatomy and how babies are made biologically. Now, in terms of kids being exposed to if, when, how, or not, about people's sexual behavior and patterns and choices, what have you, but that's up to the parent. And not every parent is on board with that, nor should they be.
You know, Lisa, Kaylee made a key point. This is about opting out. And I want you to listen to Justice Kavanaugh. He drives that home. This is just about opting out, just saying, I don't want my kid to learn about sex yet at 3.
They're not asking you to change what's taught in the classroom. They're not asking you to change that at all. They're only seeking to be able to walk out so that they don't have to, the parents don't have their children exposed to these things that are contrary to their own beliefs.
And the lawyer responded, well, there weren't enough kids in class because too many were opting out. Well, maybe that should tell you something.
Well, what I think this is about is it's about indoctrination and it's about dividing the family. And if you look at places like the Soviet Union or Maoist China or communist states, they want loyalty to the state over the family. And they use education and youth groups to try to divide the family and to indoctrinate the youth and pit the kids against the parents, report them, turn on your parents. And that's what they're trying to do here. And you can see even, big picture on some of this other stuff. If a teacher tells Paulina that she can be Paul, by the way, don't go home and tell your parents, does that not divide the family? Does that not pit the kid against the parents? And that's what they're trying to do here. And that's why to reasonable minds like us on the couch, this doesn't make sense. We're like, this is crazy. But if your intention is to indoctrinate and to divide the family, it makes perfect sense.
Douglas, my daughter came home yesterday talking about math and 1 + 1, and she's in pre-K, and I thought that's what you're supposed to learn in school.
That seems normal.
It's normal
It's
stuff.
really crazy when you think about it like that, isn't it? If you look at educational standards across the West, particularly in America today, look at the levels of literacy, K through 12. Look at the levels of numeracy. In a state like this, people leave their formal education, and about half have failed in basic literacy and numeracy. So when I hear teaching unions and others saying, we've got to tell the 3-year-olds about drag queens and so on, I think, why don't you just teach them first? Teach them the basics that are going to set them up for their lives. I mean, this country is meant to be, we want to be competitive on the world stage. We've got China and others coming in to try to eat our lunch. Do we want to produce a generation of people who are literate and numerate and leading the world? Or do we want to teach people from the age of 3 the most important thing you can do is kind of like do the drag queen story hour? It's very strange. And there's one other thing quickly, Kaylee, you mentioned your child this morning. There's that famous quote that if from G.K. Chesterton, that if people stop believing in God, it's not that they believe in nothing, but that they'll believe in anything. If you go to a bookshop in this city, in particular New York, but I'm sure it's the same on the West Coast, go to the children's section, just look at what is on offer, and you see this kind of stuff. It's all as if they're worshipping the great god drag queen. And drag queens are great for adults if they want to see them, but why does this have to be the litmus test to force on American children? It makes no sense to me, other than it's a new worshipping object of part of the left.
I love that you snuck G.K. Chesterton in there. That did
Thank
not
you.
get past me. Very well done, Douglas Murray.